Still in school at St. Catherine High, Rohan Brown took pleasure in serving his peers. In 1994, he got the opportunity to not only serve his fellow Jamaicans, but also to protect and reassure.
My early life as a police officer, I spent about 4 months in uniform. After leaving training school, I went to the CIB office on orientation and went on CIB training course shortly afterwards. By 1996, which would have been less than 2 years or so after joining the police force, I became a full detective.
Before losing his sight, Detective Corporal Brown says he was a no-nonsense police officer, always doing his part to ensure that law and order were maintained in Port Antonio. Rohan Brown was a rising star in the police force who was enjoying his job. Then tragedy struck.
I had an accident when I went on a training course at the training school. The accident was along the Mandela Highway. We were coming back and there was a bus that was switching from lane to lane along the Mandela Highway. And when we reached out by White Marl, the bus went over into the right lane. We attempted to pass on the left. And by the time the vehicle that I was traveling in, by the time it reached to the front of the bus, it was obvious that the bus was switching lane again and coming over back to the left lane. By the time the tail of the vehicle, of our vehicle, reached to the front of the bus was basically in the left lane and clipped to the rear end of our vehicle. It overturned. I sustained some head injuries and was taken to the Spanish Town Hospital.
This was the beginning of what would result in total blindness a few years later, sending his life into a tailspin.
There were so many things going through my mind because without a job, I would not be able to take care of my family, and that would have been priority. It would have been at the forefront of my mind. So that was one thing. Then I was thinking like, look, what was my life going to be like? How am I going to live with blindness?
Being placed on sick leave for about 3 years was the most difficult point in the police officer's life, a transition he had to come to terms with. But with the help of the Police Federation and the Jamaica Society for the Blind, he was able to prove that he could still be a vital member of the police force.
I was enrolled in a rehabilitation program there, where I did computer, I did braille, and mobility. So I was basically trained to move around by myself.
After the training ended, he was reinstated in the Jamaica Constabulary Force.
The functions I presently do is different from what I used to do, because what I used to do was basically criminal investigation. I used to be with the CIB, so I used to do the hardcore investigation. What I now do is a sort of a different role where I'll take on like community groups, the widely publicized meetings, the schools, the youth groups, the neighborhood watches. Those are the places that I go now. I give pep talks, I give motivational and inspirational talks, things like those.
Adjusting to life in the dark was very difficult at first for Detective Corporal Rohan Brown.
When you become blind, life is no longer the way that you knew it. Life changes, and it changes at a rapid pace, and you have to adjust, and you have to adjust quickly. And because the fact is, we take certain things for granted. We have sight, so we just take sight for granted. But when you lose your sight, then you realize that it was one of the most important faculty that you had. And you have to now begin to depend on the other senses and hope that they don't fail you.
His walk in the dark inspired a book.
The loss of one faculty to life is not the end of life itself. and there's a lot that you can do even in blindness. Writing the book was, I was motivated or inspired by some of my friends who thought that I had a story to share, and the way that I dealt with the blindness would have been an inspiration to other persons.
A second book is in the making that the police officer says will be different. A courageous walk in the dark depicted the struggles, but the new book will be all about the positive side of being blind.
Blindness has allowed me to love more. Blindness has allowed me to trust more. It has allowed me to walk by faith and not by sight.
So don't be afraid